just want him to rot in hell. I did not know what he was capable of. I didn't know that he would do this to our boy. More than life itself. I'm sorry, now I'm getting emotional. I don't know if you have any kids, Sarah, but I mean, from one parent to any other parent in the world, he was a good kid. He was a good boy, and I loved him with all my heart.
Welcome to ABC4 News at 6. I'm Brian McElhatton. A Utah man will spend the rest of his life in prison for abusing a 2-year-old boy to death. A judge handed down that sentence today. And right now at 6, we're hearing from that little boy's mother for the very first time.
The sound was faint at first, uneven, shallow breaths and the quiet creak of old floorboards. In the stillness of a cold December morning in Roy, Utah, that sound was almost lost to the silence. By the time anyone realized something was wrong, the house had gone quiet. Only hours earlier, twin toddlers had been laughing, their small hands clutching toys, their voices filling a modest home. Now one lay unresponsive on the porch. Inside, the other was barely conscious, clinging to life. The man watching them wasn't a stranger. He was someone the family trusted, welcomed into their home, relied on to keep their children safe. But what happened during those hours between joy and tragedy would reveal more than a single act of cruelty. It would expose a betrayal so deep it shook an entire community, and a failure in the very system meant to protect children. And here's the most chilling fact. This man had already been convicted for harming a child before. Yet he walked free, with no restrictions keeping him from being near children again. If you're new here, welcome. We share true crime documentary cases that matter, and the lessons that can save young lives. Tell us where you're watching from in the comments, and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next case. Aleister Kunzler was just 2 years old, but his presence filled a room. Born alongside his twin sister Lara, he was the kind of child whose energy drew people in. Bright-eyed, quick to laugh, and always moving. The Kunzler family lived in Roy, Utah, a city known for its quiet neighborhoods and strong sense of community. For Justin and Brittany Kunzler, both high school sweethearts who grew up locally, it was the perfect place to raise their children. They wanted a life where their kids could play outside, know their neighbors, and feel safe. Aleister was the more outgoing of the twins, a child with boundless curiosity and a fearless streak that kept his parents on their toes. He adored his father, often curling up beside him to watch episodes of his favorite show, Teen Titans Go, or clutching his plush Puss in Boots, a toy he rarely let out of sight. He loved to draw, often filling pages with colorful shapes and scribbles that he'd proudly show to anyone willing to look. Lara, just minutes younger, was his constant companion. Quieter and more observant, she often watched Aleister's adventures before joining in, the two moving through life side by side. They balanced each other, his boundless energy met with her steady calm. The bond between them was undeniable. They were rarely seen apart, whether playing in the living room or sharing snacks at the kitchen table. Their older sister Bella was part of that close-knit circle, and their grandmother, Joanne Kunzler, held a special place in their lives. Joanne's home was a second haven, a place where the children were met with warmth, love, and the kind of steady guidance only a grandparent can provide. There was no hint of danger in their daily lives. Justin and Brittany maintained a small, trusted circle when it came to childcare. Friends and family members stepped in when needed, and the parents took comfort in knowing their children were surrounded by people they believed would protect them as fiercely as they did. It was a home built on love, trust, and the belief that their children were safe. A belief that in time would be shattered. Among that trusted circle was Jonathan Allen Dunn. At 36 years old, he was a familiar presence in the Kunzler family's life. To friends and neighbors, he came across as calm, patient, and always willing to help when called upon. Over the years, he had been present often enough to earn the kind of trust that is not easily given, the kind that led Brittany and Justin to occasionally place their children in his care. Around the family, he carried himself like an adopted uncle. someone they felt they could rely on to watch over the twins when schedules became tight. But behind that image was a history most people never saw. In 2017, Dunn had been convicted of intentional child endangerment after severely injuring a 2-year-old in his care. Court records from that case documented a broken arm and visible facial bruising on the child. For that offense, Dunn served time in prison. He was released in April of 2019 and remained on parole until December of 2021. Once his parole ended, there were no legal restrictions that prevented him from being around children again. No community notifications, no oversight from authorities. His name was not in the kind of public database that would have raised alarms for a family friend seeking occasional babysitting help. This gap, the space between his release and the absence of any ongoing monitoring, is where the system left children vulnerable. To the Kunzlers, Dunn's willingness to step in for last-minute childcare appeared to be an act of kindness. They had no reason to believe that placing their trust in him would lead to anything but safe, routine care for their children. Yet the reality was that a man with a violent record against a child was once again in a position of unsupervised access, and no safeguard was in place to stop it. In the days leading up to December 20th, 2023, the Kunzler household was caught in the pace of the holiday season. Like many families, Justin and Brittany were balancing work obligations, errands, and preparations for the festivities ahead. With 3 young children, including energetic twins, the need for occasional help was a practical reality. Jonathan Dunn had stepped into that role before. On prior occasions, he had cared for the twins without any sign of trouble, at least none that the family had ever seen. To Brittany and Justin, there was no reason to suspect anything out of the ordinary. The absence of public alerts or community notices about his prior conviction meant there was nothing in the open to raise suspicion. Without a visible record, Dunn's past remained concealed from those who might have questioned his access to children. As December 20th arrived, the day's schedule left the Kunzlers needing someone they trusted to watch Aleister and Lara through the evening and into the next morning. Dunn was available, willing, and familiar with the children. The arrangement was simple. He would handle bedtime, keep the twins safe through the night, and be there when their parents returned. From the outside, it was an ordinary plan on an ordinary winter evening. Inside the Kunzler home, no one could have imagined that this night, and the trust placed in a longtime acquaintance, would mark the beginning of events that would leave a permanent scar on the family and ignite questions about how such risks can remain hidden in plain sight. December 20th, 2023 began as an ordinary winter evening inside the Kunzler home. Jonathan Dunn was watching Aleister and Lara, something he had done before without incident. According to his statements, the night started with simple games, but police say his own account, along with the physical evidence, shows that this play escalated into actions that were unsafe and harmful for children so young. Investigators determined that both twins sustained injuries consistent with being handled in a physically aggressive way. Lara's most visible injury was a head trauma, believed to have been caused by impact with a hard surface in the home. Aleister also showed signs of similar blunt force harm. These were not the kinds of injuries that could be explained by an accident or roughhousing alone. At some point during the night, Dunn gave both children Tylenol, children's cough medicine, and a sleep aid, none of which had been authorized by their parents. Investigators later concluded there was no legitimate medical reason for the medications. Detectives suspected the purpose was to make the children drowsy and less likely to resist. Forensic evidence and medical assessments uncovered another deeply troubling element. Both children showed signs of contact to intimate areas that had no explanation consistent with ordinary caregiving. Dunn admitted during questioning that he had used items from inside the home, including a foam mallet and a toy, in ways that were inappropriate and harmful. Investigators believe these were used to inflict pain and exert control over the children, actions far outside any acceptable conduct. By the morning of December 21st, between 8:30 and 9 a.m., Aleister's breathing had stopped. Dunn later acknowledged he recognized the boy was in distress, but nearly an hour passed before he called 911. When first responders arrived, Aleister was found unresponsive on the porch. Inside, Lara was conscious but injured. Several other unrelated children were also present. They were immediately placed in state protective custody. This chain of events, the aggressive handling, the unauthorized medication, the inappropriate contact, and the unexplained delay in calling for help, formed the core of the criminal case against Dunn. It revealed a night of escalating harm that ended with irreversible consequences. If this already feels like a story that needs to be heard, take a second to subscribe. These aren't just cases. They're warnings every family should know about. When the 911 call was logged in the late morning, and the response was immediate. Within minutes, units from the Roy City Police Department and emergency medical teams converged on the property. Their pace, their coordination, and the urgency in their movements reflected that they knew they were stepping into a high-priority situation. Paramedics reached Aleister first. Despite their rapid intervention, it was clear there was nothing more that could be done for him, and he was pronounced deceased shortly after their arrival. Attention then shifted to Lara, who was conscious but in visible distress. She was stabilized on site and transported without delay to a specialized children's hospital, where a scan confirmed she had suffered a brain bleed. Medical staff began immediate treatment, and over the coming hours, her condition stabilized. Meanwhile, officers began a methodical walkthrough of the home. What they observed was not consistent with the version of events Dunn had given in his initial account. Details in the layout, the state of the rooms, and the presence of certain items suggested a sequence far different from what he described. These early observations, combined with the hospital's preliminary medical reports, provided investigators with enough cause to treat the residence as an active crime scene. In those first critical hours, the mission was twofold: protect the surviving child and secure every piece of evidence that could explain what had happened. Those steps would form the foundation of the case that would ultimately expose the truth behind the events inside that home. The Roy City Police Department took the lead in the investigation, securing the scene and methodically documenting every detail. Forensic specialists moved through the home, collecting items that would later prove critical to the case. Among them was a foam mallet, a Nerf toy that investigators determined had been used in a way far from its intended purpose, and bottles of over-the-counter medications matching those Dunn had admitted to giving the children. As detectives pieced together the timeline, Dunn was brought in for questioning. During his interview, he acknowledged getting rough while playing with the twins, conceding that his actions may have gone too far. He also admitted to administering Tylenol, children's cough medicine, and a sleep aid, confirming they had not been prescribed or approved by the parents. When pressed on why he delayed the 911 call after noticing Aleister was in distress, his answers shifted, raising even more suspicion. Background checks revealed a detail that stunned both the family and the wider community: Dunn's prior conviction for harming a young child in 2017. Many who knew him were unaware of this history, and the revelation intensified questions about how someone with that record could be trusted again in such a role. Forensic reports, coupled with Dunn's own statements, gave investigators a clear picture, one that pointed to a night of escalating harm, decisions made without care for the children's well-being, and a dangerous delay in seeking help. But what police uncovered in Dunn's past, and what they learned in the days after, raised an even bigger question. How was he allowed to be alone with children at all? The rest of this story isn't just about what happened, it's about how it could have been prevented. In December 2023, following the investigation, the Weber County Attorney's Office filed multiple charges against Jonathan Dunn. The most serious was aggravated murder, a capital offense in Utah that could carry the death penalty. Alongside it were charges of aggravated child abuse and 2 counts of aggravated sexual abuse of a child. Prosecutors said these charges reflected the seriousness of the case and the sustained nature of Dunn's actions. As the case advanced, the possibility of a capital trial remained on the table. But on August 13, 2024, Dunn pleaded guilty to all charges. In exchange, prosecutors agreed to remove the death penalty from consideration. This ensured a permanent sentence of life in prison without the possibility of parole, a resolution that meant Dunn would never have the opportunity to be released. During sentencing, Judge Noel S. Hyde presided over the proceedings. For aggravated murder, Dunn received life without parole. On each count of aggravated sexual abuse, he was sentenced to 15 years to life. The aggravated child abuse conviction carried a term of 1 to 15 years. All sentences were ordered to run concurrently.
This is not a mistake. This was not an accident. This was not anything other than intentional depravity.
Last week, Dunn pleaded guilty to aggravated murder and 3 other counts of child abuse and sexual abuse. On Wednesday, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole.
I just want to say I'm sorry for what I've done. And it haunts me every day. And I hope that one day the family can forgive me for what I've done.
The family did not find his statement believable.
Jonathan, you are the epitome of evil, and our family will never forgive you for the damage that you have done and the evil acts you have performed to these sweet, innocent babies.
In court, prosecutors from the Weber County Attorney's Office detailed the evidence, the findings from the scene, the medical reports, and Dunn's own admissions. They described the case as one involving intentional and calculated actions against children he was entrusted to protect. The guilty plea avoided the lengthy process of a trial and brought legal closure. While the sentence ensured Dunn would remain incarcerated for life, the outcome also left the community and the family reflecting on the events that had led to that day in court. The impact of the case on the Kunzler family was immediate and profound. Justin and Brittany attended every hearing, often surrounded by relatives who came to support them in the difficult months that followed. In court, their presence was a quiet but powerful reminder of what had been lost. A verified GoFundMe was established by family friends to help cover funeral costs and related expenses. Donations and messages poured in from the local community and beyond, many expressing sympathy and outrage over what had happened. During sentencing, family members addressed the court, speaking not only about their grief, but also about the need for stronger protections for children. Their statements were measured but resolute, calling for accountability from both the individual responsible and the systems that allowed him access. The case also sparked broader conversations within the community. Advocacy groups, local leaders, and concerned residents began openly discussing the gaps in caregiver vetting. Questions arose about how background checks are conducted, who has access to that information, and what steps could prevent similar cases in the future. For many, the tragedy became more than just a single incident. It was a call to action. While the legal process had reached its conclusion, the family's pursuit of change had only begun, ensuring that Aleister's memory would be tied not just to loss, but to a push for stronger safeguards for every child. The case of Aleister Kunzler revealed a disturbing gap in the way high-risk offenders are monitored after their release. Jonathan Dunn's prior conviction for harming a young child was a matter of public record. Yet once his parole ended in December 2021, there was no system in place to track his interactions with children. Without ongoing monitoring or public notification, there was nothing to prevent him from stepping back into a role of trust, and nothing to alert families to the risk. In Utah, as in many states, formal caregiver screening is only mandated for those working in state-licensed facilities such as daycare centers. For informal arrangements like friends, neighbors, or unofficial babysitters, there is no standard requirement for background checks, leaving parents to rely on personal trust and references. That absence of oversight was a critical factor in this case. The tragedy underscores the need for stronger prevention measures that families can take on their own. This includes running independent criminal background checks on any caregiver, regardless of how long they've been known to the family. Periodic, unannounced visits during childcare hours can also help ensure transparency and accountability. Just as important is creating an environment where children feel safe to speak up. Age-appropriate conversations about boundaries, body safety, and comfort levels can give children the language to express when something feels wrong. Parents and guardians should also trust their instincts. Changes in a child's behavior, unexplained injuries, or unusual secrecy from a caregiver are all reasons to ask questions. Finally, if there is ever a suspicion of harm, it should be reported immediately to local child protection services or law enforcement. Acting quickly can not only protect a child in danger, but also prevent further harm. This case is a sobering reminder. While the justice system must do more to monitor known offenders, community vigilance remains one of the most effective tools in protecting children. Today, Aleister's memory is carried forward by his family, who speak of his joy, energy, and the way he lit up every room he entered. His twin sister, Laura, continues her recovery surrounded by love, determination, and the unwavering support of her community. Friends, neighbors, and advocacy groups have rallied to honor Aleister by pushing for better safeguards, hoping that no other family will endure a similar loss. This case is not just a story about what happened. It is a warning about what can happen when vigilance fades. If this case opened your eyes, please share it so more people can recognize the warning signs. And subscribe, because knowing these stories is one of the first steps to preventing them.